Hey guys, so this is going to be a different type of video. Over the past year or so, I've discovered that I really like cooking, and I've slowly worked to add new dishes to my repertoire. Originally, I worked solely out of a crock pot, but now I've evolved to doing other non-crock pot dishes, mainly thanks to having a lot of time on my hands thanks to the current situation. Usually I work off of recipes that I found online or in cookbooks or saw on YouTube or something, but one thing that's mostly my own recipe that I've made recently is pizza. Now, there are a lot of things that I picked up from said recipes or YouTube videos, but for the most part, I was determined to wing it and fly by the seat of my pants just to see what I could come up with. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the first pizza I made was inspired chiefly by the bunny corn sausage pizza that William Riker made in Nepenthe on Star Trek Picard, and the behind-the-scenes video, along with Binging with Babish's version, influenced it. Though I tried to take more inspiration from the official CBS source than Babish, since I personally prefer margarita pizza as opposed to the classic Neapolitan that Babish made. Now, it's not entirely homemade, since the dough is store-bought, but that's mainly because I don't have the attention span to create homemade dough balls. Although, thanks to watching years of Chuck E. Cheese and Pizza Hut training videos, I do know how, but I still think this counts as homemade. You'll want to have your ingredients pre-prepped, which include pizza dough, your mozzarella cheese. For this I'm using fresh mozzarella, but you can use the bagged shredded kind or grate your own block if you're so inclined, your sauce, and for this build, a sliced Roma tomato. For other builds I've done meatballs, sausage and pepperoni, and a vegetable pie with olives, peppers, and onion, but I'm sticking with the basics and my personal favorite here. The first thing that you're going to want to do is to preheat your pizza stone in the oven at 450 for about an hour before you make it. If you don't have a pizza stone, you can just use a regular baking sheet, though I'd also preheat it, otherwise it'll take longer to cook the pizza once it's constructed. Trust me, I did it once without preheating it, and I almost ruined the pizza stone and definitely ruined the pizza. Step 2 is, once the hour of preheating is up, to knead the dough. Start by getting a big piece of parchment paper, and I know it says safe up to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, but we're just going to ignore that because it's still safe at 450 degrees. And place that on top of an overturned baking sheet. With store-bought dough, it's pretty easy. Flour up the parchment paper, which isn't strictly necessary because it's non-stick, but the dough is very sticky and it helps to make it easier to manage. Coat the dough in flour on the paper and start the kneading. I am by no means an expert, and I don't pretend to be, and none of my pizzas have come out entirely in the shape that I wanted, but it's not that complicated, and if I can do it, so can you. Remember to press near the edges in order to really demarcate where the crust should be, and you don't want it too thin or else you won't be able to lift the slice once it's finished cooking. The next step, once the dough is ready, is to sauce that dough up, and you have a lot of options here. But what I'm using in this build is my mother's proprietary meatball sauce recipe that she learned from my grandmother that uses tomato sauce, tomato paste, and water, but I am sworn to secrecy never to reveal the mix of spices and seasonings that she uses. It's fantastic sauce, and I'd patent it, but I'm worried that the experience would end up like that Saved by the Bell episode. However, in a pinch, jar sauce is just as good, and I've had a good experience with Barilla tomato and basil sauce. Spread the sauce out evenly and make sure to use enough of it that it doesn't overload it and make it soupy, but you want to make sure that there's enough that you don't have any parts of the dough left uncovered apart from the crust. I'm sure there's a more efficient way of doing it rather than a metal spoon, but it was just all I had on hand at the time of filming. Next, you're going to want to put the cheese down. If you're just spreading shredded cheese, go ahead and go nuts. It's really hard to mess that up. But if you're using sliced fresh, you need to be a bit more methodical with it. As I learned from the previously mentioned Pizza Hut training video, you want to arrange things in a circle, or in my case more of a spiral, so that the entire pizza gets enough cheese. And don't be afraid to readjust it after placement if you start to feel like you're running out of space or if you're overloading it in certain areas. Once the cheese is on, it's time for our toppings. Now, a person good at pre-planning wouldn't have sliced the tomato so thick, but what the hell, this was an extra pizza that I made just for me for the sake of documenting it, so it's no biggie. Arrange it on top and around the cheese discs, and I personally toss on some basil, salt, and pepper for flavor at this point, but that's optional and up to personal discretion. Once it's done, it's time to transfer it to the oven. Now, this is a bit of a Mickey Mouse operation, so I don't have a peel or anything proper, so I just carry the baking sheet to the oven and quickly slide the parchment paper down and onto the preheated stone, which I didn't show because it required 2 hands to do, but just trust me, it happened and it wasn't pretty. Then adjust it so it fits on the stone, shut the oven door, and turn the timer on for about 15 minutes or so, or until the crust is golden brown. After waiting that agonizingly long time and making sure that the crust is golden brown and checking underneath to make sure that it's properly cooked, we can remove our pizza from the oven. Removing it is a similarly Mickey Mouse operation, and this time I did manage to record it because I didn't have to stand directly in front of the camera to do it. It's going to be a little bit soupy, but that's okay. You're not supposed to cut it up and eat it straight away. I like to let it sit and firm up a bit before I cut into it, and there you go. A delicious margarita pizza. I don't claim that my recipe is in any way original, and again, I'm no expert, but you have to admit that my methods are unconventional. If you decide to make one of your own based on mine, let me know how it turns out. I've got a few other recipes that I consider to be mine, including a baked mac and cheese recipe that I found online but heavily modified. So let me know if you're interested in hearing about that one and seeing more cooking videos in general. Other than that, enjoy your pizza, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on the channel. And if you'd like, you can also find my videos on any of these fine websites. And if you want to help out the channel, you can support us on Patreon. See you next time.